In the 1840s, Britain treated railways like the next big network, and then thousands of families went broke. What went so wrong? Imagine Britain in the mid-1800s, a time when the air was filled with the rumble of steam engines and the sight of newly laid iron tracks stretching across the land. Those tracks represented a huge promise. A promise to bind communities together, to make travel fly by, to move mountains of goods, and to transform the lives of everyone. And it all started with the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830. While these steam roads promised a transport revolution, they also inadvertently set the stage for a financial bubble. And by the mid-1840s, the Brits passionately plunged into what we can now refer to as the Railway Mania. This was a crazy era where commoners and working-class families, middle-class investors, and members of the aristocracy believed that investing funds into a railway company was a surefire way to amass fortunes. Initially, that promise was genuine, as the new rail link reduced travel times, unlocked new markets, and generated jobs. Because of that, it was not altogether misguided for investors to view railways as a new revolution. At first, their initial successes, such as the Liverpool-Manchester rail link, demonstrated that they could transport a mass of people and goods effectively. Parliament, therefore, began to authorize hundreds of new rail companies. In 1846 alone, some 272 acts were passed. A staggering 9,500 miles of tracks got the go-ahead. But by the early 1840s, several things lined up perfectly for a speculative storm. The economy picked up, interest rates dropped, more people joined the middle class, and the public became eager for new opportunities. Railway fever gripped the country, and a spate of new companies sprang into existence almost daily. Then the headlines rolled with thrilling offers. Join our railway company and enjoy 10% dividends. Many clamored to join companies that let them pay only a 2% initial payment for shares. The combination of a promising idea and public frenzy often leads to peril, as was the case during the Railway Mania. More and more people got into buying railway shares as their prices went up, then the prices went higher still. This was a vicious cycle. Even people who would never normally touch the stock market invested their entire life savings into rail companies. A good third of the rail companies that got approved during the peak never built a single thing. They were simply a line on a map with a fancy pamphlet of promises and hope. At the same time, others like George Hudson, known as Railway King, marked the face of this period. Hudson's rail network covered over 1,000 miles by 1844, yet there remained warning signs even at this point: dodgy accounts, a board of directors acting for themselves, and touts promising the whole world in dividends. A commentator at the time explained, "In 1845, respectable men did monstrous things and were thought very clever. Late 1845, the central bank increased interest rates. Borrowing money was no longer easy. Railway shares price rise halted and started to decline. And the bubble burst. Investors soon realized that many lines weren't profitable, some couldn't even be built, and the sheer number of new companies had flooded the market. As losses piled up, countless shareholders lost everything. The mania collapsed, leading to the commercial crisis of 1847. But here's the catch. While the crash decimated thousands of investors, it also left a legacy that lasts to this day. During these frenzied years, the railways of Britain expanded enormously. Approximately 6,000 miles of track were installed between the years 1844 and 1846. A country's vital infrastructural requirements were literally erected upon the foundations of speculation. While the physical infrastructure of steel and rail lines was significant, it is crucial to also consider the human psychology that underpins every economic boom and bust. Why do smart people keep getting caught up in the same old delusions? How can good ideas go so terribly wrong and manifest as destructive manias? And what are the signals that indicate something, once again, is about to go awry? Therefore, what does one actually retain from this entire discussion? Ultimately, the story of railroads is a reflection of human behavior as every generation faces its version of the next big thing. In the 1840s, it was trains and steam. In the 2000s, it was the internet and real estate. And in the 2020s, it's digital currencies, artificial intelligence, or whatever the next technology may hold that promises to disrupt everything totally. Details of the surface continue to shift. However, the psychology of humans does not change. Behind every step lurks the old weakness that shows up. Progress is a savior to be revered. But the truth is, the desire to hold on to a savior symbolizes hope, and hope often expresses itself as madness in societies. And when madness becomes widespread, it ceases to be rational. People weren't buying shares of the railways because they knew the transportation industry. Instead, they bought shares simply because their neighbors did. This kind of thinking was simple. When everybody else was raking it in, who was I to be right? The Ouroboros was real. Money was plentiful, confidence was at a premium, and respectability was a cloak for fraud. The Railway King. George Hudson himself was a true-looking visionary, a statesman-like, eloquent wordsmith who could ring his ledgers with his clever tricks of accounting. But as credit contracted, his bubble burst, and with it the wealth and reputation of thousands of households. Does it sound familiar to you too? It all sounds familiar. The language of progress hasn't changed. Only the suits have. We still hear leaders claiming they'll redefine the future, even when their balance sheets tell a different story. When a promise grows faster than the proof behind it, that's when history starts to repeat itself. Redefine the future, even if the total debt exceeds the total earnings already. Every bubble ends the same way. The tracks stay. The people's fortunes don't. The companies disappear, but the underlying infrastructure survives, built on the foundations of misplaced belief. We tell ourselves we've learned, we rebuild, we rename, but deep down, it's the same human psychology, the desire to belong, to win, to matter, to accomplish. Then, inevitably, the next bubble arrives, whispering, "This time, it's different." And once again, we are hoping for it. But what does history whisper to us through those rusty iron tracks? Progression itself was never the enemy. We just don't know how to benefit from it or be ready for it. Without working together, without sharing, just hoping and looking out for ourselves. The railways of Victorian England proliferated at a remarkable rate. However, beneath the gigantic burden of ambition, the system broke. Railway Mania was not simply a question of trains. Railway Mania was a tale of greed, humanity, and the effects of hope exceeding wisdom. If one day you become interested in something revolutionary, instead of asking questions like, "What's in it for me?" or "What happens if it fails?" you should be asking harder questions. What will it actually accomplish? Is that ethical? Is that logical? Or who will suffer the most? And how can I prepare myself? History doesn't shout, it whispers. And history teaches us that innovation encourages, while speculation can seduce. Thus, while curiosity drives progress, skepticism should guide us, as history teaches that the truth often lies beneath the surface of popular narratives. You should listen to what history cautions about. If this story made you think, go ahead and subscribe. History doesn't remain history. It waits for us to pay attention to it.